Hello and welcome back to my channel, Bookish Lady Night, where we get a look behind the book. Today I am joined by the lovely Chantal Gadoury. She is the author of Until the Last Page. And if you love fairy tales, if you loved the show Once Upon a Time, if you love The Frog Prince, then this book is your jam. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to come join you tonight.
So this is your debut novel, right?
This is actually my 10th novel, but it's the first after many, many years, and I would consider this my debut as me, a 36-year-old woman writing in the way that I've always wanted to write, but it's like a fresh start for me.
Hey, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so great. So, before this, how long were you doing writing for? So you had 10 books out before?
So I have been writing since 2016. That was when my very first book came out. About 2016, 2017, something like that. And between the years of 2016, 27 to about 2020, I had written 9 books, and I took a break and had some life things happen, and then I now have Until the Last Page, which is my 10th book.
This book, I actually got it as an ARC, and I just devoured it. It was so cute. It just had like all the things you want in like a cute, cozy romance type book, and it was a perfect read.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it.
So what brought this upon, in your mind to write this book?
I would say that this has been a book that I have been working on since like I was a child, because I love fairy tales. I loved meshing them together when, like you're playing Barbies or you're playing with what I called them like little people. I had my little figurines of Disney characters and meshed them together and worlds collided. And then, when I was in college, I was actually a part of the writing community on Tumblr, and I was a part of the Disney Tumblr writing community, and I wrote as Ariel and the Beast and Cinderella. Like, I just loved kind of dissecting these characters and making them different and making them my own. So after I finished writing my other 9 books, I really kind of leaned into this, well, what would happen if you like fell into a book of fairy tales, and what if all these worlds sort of collided? And watching Once Upon a Time on ABC and watching The 10th Kingdom, which I think is now a Hallmark movie.
I've seen that. Ooh, I'll have to check that one out.
It was like from the early 2000s, but it's about a girl who walks into a magic mirror into what is the 10th Kingdom, I guess, and it's a fairy tale world. There's all these fairy tales. Shelley Duvall's fairy tale theater was something that I grew up with, and that was how I envisioned my world. Just the aesthetic of Shelley Duvall's fairy tale theater. Yes.
You nailed it. So my daughter watches that show now. Like, we watch it on YouTube with her. She's 10, and that is what I felt like. I felt like when I was reading your book, that viral Instagram video where the girl like opens the book and like falls back or falls or whatever direction she falls, and then she enters this magical world. I was like, this is this book.
Yep. Every time I saw that video on TikTok, I was like, that's my book. So if you like that movie or that video, oh my God, you're gonna love this. This is that.
Yes, exactly. It was wonderful. So when you are picking out your story or your characters, are you going to be doing more spin-offs within this realm of books where we'll get more of that?
Yes, so there will be a second book. I am still working out all the logistics, not only with the writing, but also with my publisher too. We're working out what the next book will look like. I have already started to pre-plan some of those fairy tales that will be incorporated in however it looks for the characters that are involved. Yes, there's lots and lots of different plans, and I'm very careful about which ones, especially with Until the Last Page. I really had a strategy of where I wanted Josephine, the main character, to enter the book, and then how she would sort of travel through all these different ones with the Frog Prince. And then ultimately, honestly, the last story was a surprise for me. I didn't really put everything together until I was like, okay, this is where you're from. This is how this is. Okay, all right. So that one was a more of the surprise for me. And I'm trying to make sure that I don't have that experience in the sequel, but if I do, it's okay. It'll be a welcome surprise.
Yeah, it will. It's kind of like that, like plot twist you didn't see coming, and
Yeah,
like you join us in it because it just led you there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Josephine and Aneurin, when I was writing them, they really kept me on my toes. And I did not expect a lot of the things that they sort of provided to me as I was writing. So it's been an interesting journey, not only for them, but for me too.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask if you did like an outline or if it was more like pantsing, where the characters were like, "No, we're going over here, we're going over there."
I am definitely a pantser. I really try not to outline too much because then I feel a little too constricted and then that sort of dries up my imagination, my creativity. But I knew that I needed to have at least we're getting from point A to point B, and how you get there is up to you, but we got to get from here to there. And um, yeah, they posed a lot of challenges for me, especially because I was a pantser.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. They're very fully faceted, dynamic characters. So they definitely came to you, I guess, really ready to go and ready to share their story, it sounds like.
Josephine definitely did. She was like, okay, I know that this is what's going to happen to me. Aneurin was really a surprise just with the way that he was. He's a very sassy, snotty, stuck-up frog, and he's very opinionated, and that posed a lot of challenges for Josephine, who is a woman of our time and has a very forward way of thinking. And she's also very opinionated and knows what she wants or is trying to figure out what she wants in life. And they just bantered so much
Banter
for
was
me.
great.
It was great. It did get to a point where I was starting to get scared of I know that they need to get to another destination, and how am I going to pull them apart enough to stop fighting? And those were actually moments where I would go to my mom. I live with my mom, and she was a huge part of this book for me. And I'd be like, I don't listen to this. This is the dialogue that's happening. How do I get them to be nice to one another? And she's like, yeah, I don't know. That frog, he's a meeting frog.
Yeah. You're like, hey, come here.
Yeah.
No, it was really the banter was so good. So good. It probably was daunting though when you were writing because you're like, slow down, stop, like chill out, like too much, too fast. But that made it all the better when you finally got it out on the page for sure.
Yeah. I did have to actually edit out one scene where they both sort of took it too far. And I was like, I don't really know how you would come out of that.
Yeah.
So I at least got it written on the page. They got it out of their system and then forward.
I hear authors talk about their characters like they're like fully there and they're just like, I'm here, we're doing this, and I don't care what you say, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Learning how you guys have to like talk them off the ledge and call them back this way and that whole dynamic, it's so great.
So interesting to have those internal conversations with yourself because essentially is what you're doing, but it's also not like they are their own people. And especially Josephine and Aneurin, they absolutely were their own people. And I just knew I was just there. I'm just typing.
You're just the scribe. I'm
Yep.
describing whatever you say. So it's really great. I love that. So how have you been celebrating your milestones now that this is your 10th book?
Just sort of taking it in. Back in October when the book was released, it was really exciting to finally have this book that I love so much. It is honestly one of my favorite books that I've ever written. It's one that I know I will, cherish into my whole adulthood later in life. Aside from that, I guess just moving forward and trying to plan what the next book will look like or what the next couple of different books, because I know that I would love to continue to write different genres, different stories, different retellings. But for now, I've just been sort of taking it in and trying to give my brain a rest, even though I need to not do that. Celebrating by learning how to crochet. And I just made some slippers for my mom.
I want to crochet so bad. I sew, but like I have like some dexterity issues now from sewing for so long that I'm like, my fingers don't want to work. And I love crochet. I think it's so amazing. And I just love that. I love that you did that. She's going to love those. She'll keep them and adore them. So that's.
I've been learning off of YouTube, to be honest with you. I just been watching YouTube videos and I bought some, yarn and the crocheting needle in different sizes. And I made a hat, I've made a scarf, I've made some slippers. It's all just from YouTube.
I didn't even think about that. Like, hello, everything is on YouTube. Like,
Everything on YouTube. Yeah, and I love finding like the ladies, it's usually ladies, who do real slow and, they show you their hands and how, and I don't do it exactly the way they do it, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, that's great. That's so great. So this is kind of like a fun question. So what is your go-to drink and snack while you're writing?
Iced coffee, for sure. I love me some iced coffee. A snack is probably pretzels, or I do love some grapes. Pretzels are usually the thing that if I want a snack, I'm snacking on those.
Yeah, that's a good choice for sure. That's definitely a good choice. So do you have a moment that you can recall in your writing journey where you felt like really proud?
Probably at the end of this book, because I actually never thought that I was going to write again after my 9th book. I really thought like, well, that was fun. We've written 9 books, and there were some things in my professional writing life that kind of happened, and which is why I took a break. And when I would say because of those things, I really lost a lot of my confidence, and I wasn't really sure that I would ever not be able to write again, but be able to write like a full-fledged book, and that I would be able to do all the steps that are sort of required into entering the publishing world. And so just being able to finish the book one was a huge accomplishment of like writing the end and knowing that I did it and that I could do it and I can do it again. But even more when I received my publishing offer, that I was so proud of myself because I did that, and that just to have that fresh start again. This book has just meant so much to me. So finishing this book, being able to share it with the world, if this is the last book I ever write again, I can at least know that I accomplished something that I didn't think I could do again.
Wonderful. That's so great. It's like a cathartic, moment of you push past obstacles or whatever was in the way in the time, and you didn't let it discourage you. So that's really, really great. Oh, I love the book even more now. So does writing energize you, or does it make you feel tired?
I think it depends on what's going on. Right now, trying to write a sequel, I do find a little tiring. Mm-hmm. My brain hasn't been with Josephine and Enron for a little bit, so it's a little hard to tap into their voices and to find them again. But I do remember how much fun it was when I was with them, and how just energizing it was to be like, oh, I gotta write another 20 more pages. I gotta get through this scene. I want to get to the next part. I want to get to this thing that's going to happen. And it was very motivating to every day look forward to that I could go back and I could be with them. So I really look forward to that experience again. I got to get through those first few pages and find them again. Yeah. Just sort of, it's like learning how to ride a bike again. It takes a little bit of practice, but I'll get my groove on again.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be so good. I'm excited to see what the future has in store for this series and those characters for sure. So have you ever had writer's block?
Yeah. Yes, I've been struggling with that for a while now, to be honest with you. Not only for the sequel, but there is another story that's totally not related to this that I would really, really love to write someday. And every time I open that Word document, my brain just goes, no, not today. And no matter how hard I push, no matter how hard I try, it's still a blank page, and it's so frustrating. I have not found the cure for writer's blocks for myself. It's just, I just have to be kind to myself is what I've learned. I just have to be okay with that the page is blank right.
Yeah, it'll come when it's meant to come.
Yeah.
It'll come like probably at the most inconvenient time, but then it'll come and it'll just pour out of you.
The worst part is when you're in the shower. That is where my ideas come. So when I'm in the shower and I can't write things down, it's not like I can take a pen and paper into a wet environment and be jotting.
Right.
But that is where a lot of the times I would escape to go figure out like what was going to happen and until the last page. And I guess that's where I had the time to really like be within my mind and no distractions. And there are times now where I'm like, okay, yeah, how am I going to do this? And what's going to happen with this? And the scene will play out and the dialogue will be there. And I'm like, okay, I gotta hurry. I gotta get out. I gotta go write this down. And by the time I get to my computer or a piece of paper, like it just has dissipated, or it's not this magical thing that it had been. And I gotta figure out a clever way of writing in the shower. I really do.
Wait, I maybe get like a whiteboard, you know, the suction kind,
Yeah.
and like use a marker, like one of those like specialized markers, because they make them. I use them sometimes when I'm teaching my kids. Like they're like, there's like dry erase, there's wet erase, there's like different types of markers, and maybe you could like mount it right outside the shower door, and then you could scribble, and then it's there.
That might be life-changing. I'm not gonna lie. I think I need to invest in that.
Try it, because at least it's like mounted to the wall, and you could just have the little, because they even like at Target they sell like those little pen holders with a magnet on the back, so if the whiteboard's magnetized, you can stick it to there and then just have a marker there and then jot down your notes, and then like you won't lose them.
Yep. Okay. Well, then maybe I need to go write Santa a last minute letter. Say, please deliver this.
Definitely. That might help. Try that.
Okay, I will.
Help you with that. Because yeah, that would be so frustrating when you're in the shower and you're like, wait, that was perfect. And then you go out and you go, wait, what did I write?
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be very hard. So do you feel like you have a writing kryptonite?
Like a writing weakness?
Yeah, something that'll like derail you or just mess up what you're working on.
I'm trying to think of like what, honestly, any sort of like distraction can do that for me. TikTok is a huge kryptonite. Like even where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to check my email real quick. And then suddenly I'm on TikTok and it's been 3 hours. Just wasted all that time. I would probably say, yeah, like social media is definitely a thing that distracts me from the task that I should be doing.
Yeah.
Pinterest. I go in there with good intentions, trying to build a board, trying to, collect ideas and faces and dresses and all of it. And then I'm so busy trying to just build a collage. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to build this collage and I'm going to post it, and then there's another hour or two that are down the drain that I could be writing.
Oh, yeah.
So social media.
Social media is great, but it's such a like task killer for sure. It is so bad. So if you could go, let's say, I usually say go back in time, but we're gonna mix it up because you did a fantasy book. If you could go through a portal,
okay,
and go back in time to your younger self before what you know now, and tell your younger writing self anything, what would you tell yourself?
Well, I know I would go back to high school because that is when I was really dreaming about being a writer. I have journals for every year from 7th to 12th grade. That was my high school. And I would just write all these bucket lists, and writing a novel was number one on my bucket list. So I'd probably go, 15, 16-year-old Chantal and tell her that she wrote a book. She wrote 10 books, and that she should be immensely proud of herself for doing that, and that it's okay to not be really great at grammar and spelling. It's not, future technology will help you. And I'd tell her to not be afraid to be so, to think out of the box, to be creative. I had been so scared to be out of the norm of what writing entailed. I was of the generation where Twilight had just come out in 2005. I was a junior in high school, and that book was life-changing for me. It was the first time I had ever read something that was first point of view, which probably says a lot that I just didn't read as many fantasy books, but it was the first time I had ever seen a character that I had a crush on. And, so Twilight was really a game changer for me. I knew I wanted to be a writer after that. And when I went into college, that writing fantasy and writing Twilight wasn't necessarily something that was smiled upon in the academic world. However, it was definitely encouraged for you to write the things that you wanted to write. And I would just say, Chantal, you're going to go to college, you're going to go for creative writing, be creative, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to say that you love Twilight and that you love the Hunger Games and you love all these things. Because it's just going to help you be able to explore who you are as a writer sooner than hiding it and then writing on Tumblr later and figuring yourself out. Like, just do it now, especially while you got the professionals with you. You got these professors who are going to be really great mentors for you. Take advantage, because I didn't. I really didn't.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's I feel like a lot of the time we're our own worst enemy because we're scared to try.
I would tell her, just try.
So great. So your background is in writing and creative writing.
Yes. Yep. I went to college for creative writing, not originally. I went in wanting to be an English teacher. And I was sitting in an English class and I thought, I don't want to do this. I don't want to just read that. I want to write it. And then I just switched to my major and started taking poetry, which I found I'm not good at poetry. But fiction and nonfiction actually was my two genres that I really enjoyed. And I enjoyed nonfiction even more than I ever thought I would. And I've really taken a lot of the things that I learned in my non-creative writing classes into fantasy writing. I was able to pull things that were from my life, because there are a lot of things in Until the Last Page that are from my life. And Josephine is such a nod to a younger version of myself. While there are a lot of characters who are absolutely fictional, they're not based off of anyone, there are a lot of like personality traits or little nuggets that are in there that I just learned to sort of pull when I was taking nonfiction classes.
So what sparked you to write your first book?
Well, I was taking a advanced fiction, the novel class in college, and I had just decided that I wanted to write a fairy tale retelling. I had loved Beauty by Robin McKinley. I wanted to write a book like that. And if you're not familiar with Beauty, it's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. And it's the traditional Beauty and the Beast, where she's, eating with the Beast every night. He's asking her to marry him. But it was such a really cool experience of reading this book that's a fairy tale, but it's like for young adults. And I wanted to write something like that. So I started planning out a Persephone and Hades retelling. And I wanted to make it really different. I wanted Persephone to be a reincarnation. She's going to be reincarnated into a modern day girl, and Hades has to come find her, and he has to make her remember who she is. And that was the gist of my very, very first novel, which originally was titled Seven Seeds of Summer. And then when I received the rights back to that book, I rebranded it, I named it Blinding Night, and it was published through a different publisher at the time. And it was really exciting to sort of see that come into fruition. But that, long story short, that's where it started from, was a college class.
Hades and Persephone. So I definitely will check that one out for sure.
It's a fun story.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. The way you said with reincarnation, he has to search for her. I love that. I love that. So I'm going to ask you, since you're a fantasy writer, I always ask my fantasy writers this: if you could be any mythical creature or being, what would you be and why?
I would love to be a mermaid. I'm not going to lie. I love the ocean. I love swimming. I love just water. I don't know what it is about going to the ocean. It's not about being on the beach and sun tanning. I know some people just love that. I could just stare at the ocean and be happy. And yes, and it's so relaxing. And every time I'm at the beach, my grandparents live in Myrtle Beach, so my mom and I go there at least once a year. And there's just something about sitting there and imagining like what kind of world would be under there. And if I were a mermaid, if I were Ariel's friend, if there was a different, group of mermaids, if they're not the traditional like Disney type, what would it be like? And what would the world look like? So I've always wanted to be a mermaid, always.
Do you think, okay, so I'm going to I have another question to follow up with that, but really quick, would you be a mermaid or a mermaid shifter?
Ooh, a mermaid shifter, because I would like to come back on land. Yeah.
Yeah, do both. Yeah. So, do you think that you'll go down into the lore of mermaids in that type of fantasy and really expand on that in your writing later on?
Funny story. So I have written 2 mermaid novels, and they were a duology, and it was a retelling of The Little Mermaid, but it's sort of like The Little Mermaid meets Treasure Planet meets a bookstore keeper, because there's a dashing bookstore keeper in my story. I would love to revisit the mermaid world one day, even if I could get those books republished someday. Because unfortunately, all 9 of my titles are no longer out in the world other than through audiobook. But one day, I would love to get them back out again because I love those characters. I love all the characters. I love all the worlds that I created. I would love to be able to share them again. But yes, mermaids.
Like a Kickstarter, limited edition with all of the bells and whistles and do character art. That would be really cool.
Yeah, yep. But yes, I loved my time when I was writing in the mermaid world, and I'd love to go back there again. I think about it all the time.
I like The Little Mermaid, but I like the original.
Yes.
Original, like Hans Christian Andersen Little Mermaid story. It's way different than the Disney version, for sure.
Way different, yeah. And it's tragic, but it's so beautiful.
So what is the most difficult thing about writing for you?
Descriptions. Sometimes I get too stuck on describing things, and I think that I'm not describing it enough. So I know that Stephen King is known for doing a lot of info dumps in his books. I know it's a controversial opinion, but I feel like I do the same thing sometimes. And when I'm going back to editing, I'm realizing that I have info dumped way too much into just one portion of the story, where I could be lacing that information through dialogue or through actions. And, I even struggle with some realistic dialogue. I think I get so stuck in my mind. I'm seeing it like a movie in my mind. I'm like, oh, dramatics. And that's really not how people talk. And I have to sort of remember that it's not a soap opera. It's a book that needs to feel a little real for other people to enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. We want to get lost in the world, but now I can see what you're saying. So, do you struggle when you have to be in the mindset of the male character?
Well, with Amurin in this story, I guess I didn't have to be too much in his mind. I knew what he was thinking at times, but because I was so focused on being in Josephine's mind, it didn't matter so much. What I would love to explore in the sequel is to be in his mind, and I have found that to be a little challenging. I actually started to go back into my old Tumblr accounts. So I wrote as the Beast. It sounds so weird, but I wrote as the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, and I do remember really enjoying being him because I figured out his character. I figured out at least like who he was for me as the writer, and I have started to think like, okay, the mind frame that I had for this character, I need to sort of bring that into Anurin and sort of mesh them together in some capacity. And so keeping that in mind has made it a little easier, but I do find being in his brain and figuring out how he thinks and how he is looking at his world and Josephine's world and the way that he's also looking at them together as a couple who has to manage going through these different stories. Yeah, he's a tough bugger. He's a tough one. I don't think I'll ever be like him, and that's okay. But I guess at some capacity, I get the appeal, at least from Josephine's stance.
Yeah, the way they play off each other, for sure. So what is the hardest type of scene for you to write?
Action is very hard for me. I really like to have more sentimental moments. I thrive in those declaring your feelings or processing grief or processing, your internal turmoil. But action, I really struggled with a few of the scenes, and then to the last page, There is a fun one in Hansel and Gretel where the witch is chasing Anurin and Josephine around the kitchen and, trying to make sure that I had them be where they needed to be. And if someone fell down, I made sure that they were still down on the ground. So trying to make sure that I was keeping up with what was happening was the challenge. And there is a scene, I'm trying to not give away too much.
Yeah, I don't want to give away stuff, but yeah, no, that one was great.
But there is a scene that involves a cliff, and that one was just
like coordination or choreographing it.
Yes, exactly. Making sure that I kept track of where everyone was and what was happening, because I'm notorious for being like, oh, they sat on the ground, and then suddenly they're standing up, and my editor is like, but they were sitting. It's standing now. And I'm like, I don't know. They're standing now.
Flip side, what is your most favorite type of scene to write?
I love writing romance. I just love when I can have characters come together and share how they're feeling and having those deep conversations. I think as an introvert, I thrive in those moments of here's how I'm feeling. So I don't feel comfortable enough in real life to be doing those things, to just blurt out my feelings. So being able to do that for someone in a book is just so amazing. And I love when I'm so deep in the scene where I forget that my fingers and the keyboard are actually separate things. I am in the story and I'm feeling it. And because I have I'll play score music. So it's like a movie and I'm just feeling everything. And I love that. I just love that experience.
Put the soundtracks they listen to in the beginning of the book, and then you can listen to it too, because then it fully immerses you into, where their headspace was.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a fun question. I mean, you can use one of your characters, but if you have one that's maybe not one of your characters, what is your ideal book boyfriend?
I'm gonna do a nod to the book shopkeeper that I mentioned earlier. And so he's in my mermaid story, and his name is Soren. And Soren loves books, for one. He's very thoughtful, but he's also not afraid to stand up and do some protecting if he needs to, but also giving room to the heroine to also, allow her the space to stand up and protect herself, or stand up and use her own voice. My book boyfriend. I think an easy answer, though, is honestly Reese from A Court of Mist and Fury. There's just something about that man that I just go back to all that, and I know a lot of people do. He's just the ultimate book boyfriend. There's no comparison.
Yeah, he definitely is. I love him too. So what character you think is Josephine probably the most like you, as far as your characters go?
Yeah, Josephine and I mean, she is me, I am her, even though there is some separation, even though there are things that she says and does that I would never do. I would never be brave enough to do or want to do. But yes, when I was approaching the story, I wanted this to be almost a healing process for me, because I was going through something that was very similar to what Josephine was experiencing at the beginning of this book. And it was my way of just trying to learn how to fall in love with the idea of love again, and that it was okay to rediscover love, and that it doesn't have to take the form of a fairy tale love. It could be self-love, but it's okay to put your heart back out there again. And this book actually really helped me, because right after I finished writing it, I actually met my current boyfriend, who I've been with for about a year and a half now. And I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity to write all the things that I was feeling through Josephine, and that she and Anurin taught me also how to be open to love again.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah, I saw your pictures with him on your Instagram page. You guys are very cute together. That just makes it so much more special, for sure.
Yeah, and he's been so supportive, and he's been my number one fan. He's been there through the whole process of me trying to publish this book. And it's just so nice to have someone who who is like, I don't really understand everything, but I want you to tell me, and I want you to tell me about this book, and I want to read it. And I'm like, want to read? Okay, you can read it if you want to read it.
Great. So, what are some of your favorite tropes to read, and then favorite tropes to write?
Everything that A Court of Thorns and Roses is, like all the one bedroom, happily ever after, enemies to lovers. I love all that. The things that I like to write, I guess the same. Like, and in this book, there is a one bed scene, which is just silly, but there is a happily ever after in a way. And I wouldn't call them enemies, but they're not friends either. So that middle between enemies and friends to, enemies, yeah. Yeah, those I think are like the tropes. I do have a sweet spot for arranged marriages that actually end up like being happy, and that there isn't. I know that not all circumstances in books that it is that way, but I do love like when they're put together and they have to figure things out, like Bridgerton, where sometimes they're forced to like marry each other and figure it out. And I always find those books to be interesting.
I love those books. Those are my bread and butter of books. I love reading those. Those are so good. So is there a trope that you have not written yet that you want to explore?
I have not done the arranged marriage thing yet, and I would be curious to, or, putting them together where they have to be together. I would be totally open to writing something like that someday if I could figure out the plot. The one genre that I would actually love to tackle one day is like a dark romance horror. I don't really write horror, but I would really love to figure out something like that. Erin Craig is like one of my favorite authors, and I love that she has this. I don't want to call it a formula because I don't think she has a formula. I think she's very creative and comes up with really great stories. But that formula of being able to write romance and darkness and horror, and it all works. And it's like this whole world. Like, I wish I could do that. So maybe one day I might be even more inspired by Erin.
Try.
Yeah.
Great. No, I've read a couple of hers. Yeah, she definitely has that. It's like she's like a weaver.
Yeah. Yes.
With how she writes.
Yes.
And it's really good. So when you're writing, because you said you're a pantser, so do you see those plot twists at the beginning, or are you kind of getting them just as the characters are getting to them?
I'm usually getting to them when they get to them. There are times where I might have something planned, and I know that I have to, like, I want that plot twist to happen. 9 times out of 10, even though I want a certain plot twist to happen, some other plot twist happens and then it's derailed, or I have to figure out how to get back to that. But yeah, usually I'm figuring out the plot twist when they are. And in Aneurin's case, without giving anything away, I had no idea. Yeah. I had no idea his plot twist.
So you're kind of like, right at the same time, we're like, what?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's fun. I think that would be fun as a writer when you don't have it and then you're just as shocked, and then you can like relive that with your readers.
Yeah.
And like have that feeling that they had when they got there.
Yeah. At least like as the reader, you experience the plot twist and then you continue reading. For me, like, I'm experiencing the plot twist and then I have to figure out what to do with it. And when it came to him, I was like, what am I going to do with that? This doesn't make sense. It does, but it doesn't. And I have to now make it make sense. So there was that challenge of, Aneurin, that's a huge plot twist. What am I going to do with that? And I guess I had to figure it out.
With plot twists, you're like, what am I doing? What am I going to do with that? How am I going to fix that?
Yep. He was full of them. He was a plot twist. Even at the beginning of his character, when I was planning Aneurin out, I did not expect him to be what he became. He was really just supposed to be like that traditional Disney sidekick. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it would be really fun if a girl was walking around with a frog prince and he's, being banterish with her. And then when it started to sort of unravel a little bit more, it was like, oh, so perhaps even though there might not be a real love interest. Like maybe that's the love interest, or maybe that isn't. Yeah, his whole character for me was a plot twist.
I love that. So what's your favorite type of character to write, like archetype or, personality?
I really do enjoy writing heroines. I really, and when they are from our time, when it's a character that I can relate to and that it feels easy to write, I really enjoy writing them. I'm thinking back on previous titles. A lot of my titles have either a reference of a woman who is from our time. So like the Persephone Hades story, her name is Summer. Summer is like from 2019, I think, when I was writing it. I wrote a contemporary high school book that involves a young woman named Charlie. And Charlie that whole story was actually a way of me writing about the loss of my dad and trying to bring back memories of him and writing what it was like to be a teenager and exploring all those high school crushes and stuff. And so it was so easy to write in that modern voice. I struggled with my mermaid story because she was not from the modern time, but it was still fun. But writing heroines who are from our time, I like them.
So how do you work with writing? Do you have like a planning that you do? Like you work, in the morning, or do you have like, I just want to get a certain like number of scenes written or a chapter written or a word count?
When I was originally starting until the last page, I was doing a lot of writing at night. It was the time where I could finally just sort of be by myself and I didn't have to think about work. Like I could just sit down. And I think I was really aiming more for word count at that time. When I started to really get deep into until the last page and I was really trying to wrap it up, yeah, it became more about pages. Like how many pages can I get done? Can I get 2 or 3 done tonight? Right now, my goal is, can I write a paragraph tonight? Let's just write a paragraph tonight. Let's see if we can get further. And it's always a little bit more than a paragraph, but trying to tackle 2 pages right now, given what I do for a full-time job. And then with the holidays around, it's just too much.
Well, that's a good goal to break it up in little bits because then it becomes a chapter and then 2 chapters and keeps going. So that's great. So how long does it take you to finish a book when from when you get the idea to when like we get it?
Well, this one took about 2 years. I started this in 2020, and given the whole pandemic and work and everything, I really had to put this on the back burner. And I didn't revisit this until I think like the summer of 2022. And I finished by October 2022, which was a feat. I'm so proud of myself for getting it done when I did. And then I started pushing it out through like Twitter query things, and that's how I found my publisher. So, and then it took another year or so to get it out to everyone. I've written some books in 2 months, and some books have taken a couple of years. It just really all depends on how in it I'm in, that I can devote myself to. And in this, I'm hoping with the sequel that I can devote myself a little bit sooner than 2 years, because that's just too long.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to wait that long to be in the world, but if that's what it takes to get the story there, then
I would love to be able to have this done, probably in the next like couple of months. Like I'm going to really try to make sure that I dedicate some time during the holidays now that I'll be able to have some time to myself and just write.
So did you enjoy designing the cover or working with the artist to design the cover?
I did. It was so much fun. I got to see lots of different versions of the cover, and it was a wonderful conversation between the book cover artist, the publisher, and myself. I even got to pick the color, which was so much fun. I shared that teal was my favorite color, and I wanted it to feel like, a carving that you'd see in Snow White. I wanted it to feel like you could pick up the book and sort of get the gist that it's this magical fairy tale. So we saw little bits and pieces of things change. There's different symbols on the cover. And at the time, there were more like leaves and forestry. And me and the publisher were like, maybe just a little bit more symbols instead. And yes, it was so much fun. So much fun.
would be fun. I'm artist background for sure, so I would love that process. I think a lot. So, what is in your opinion? Let me start that over. I'm tongue tied. I do that a lot. Sorry.
Me
In
too.
your opinion, what makes a great story?
Well, a good beginning and a good end. I think sometimes when you don't have a good ending, a book can feel a little disappointing because you've gone from the whole journey and then you're kind of like, what? This is it? So a good beginning that lures you in and a good ending that makes you feel at least satisfied or that you want more. So if it is a cliffhanger, I have nothing against cliffhangers and I write a lot of cliffhangers. I know some people will really hate them. I'm so sorry that this book has one. I'm trying to think of what else I really think makes a good story. Good characters, good dialogue. When you feel as though you can relate with a character and you don't absolutely hate them, it's one thing to hate a villain. And you're allowed, you can, I think that's the whole point is hating certain characters in a book. But when you hate the main character of the book that you're trying to get through, it's hard to then navigate the rest of the story and enjoy it for what it is. So I think if you have good characters and good dialogue and a good ending, then you have a good book.
A lot of books with cliffhangers. They're great, except when so you're working on the next one, so you're not going to leave us hanging there without food or water for very long. There's one book I just read, and the author, the agency that was putting out the book didn't actually let us know that it was a cliffhanger. And so I got to the end and there was a big cliffhanger. And then I was like, well, when does the next book come out? And I go look and there's not even a blip anywhere about when this book is coming out, the next one. And so I'm like, I'm just going to be dangling here for who knows how long until the next one came out. So those are the kind I don't like. But most of cliffhangers, you just have to wait a few months and
if you did something.
Be okay, but it sucks when it's you don't know when it's coming and you have to wait till an unknown date. Those are when it's gut wrenching.
Yeah. If there's actually one book that I can think of that I know I don't think it was ever written to that it's supposed to have a sequel or a next book, but I think it could, and I think it should. It's called Phantom Heart by Kelly Craig or Craig. I don't know how to say her last name. I love Phantom of the Opera, and I loved Phantom Heart. It's one of my favorite books. And I got to the end of the end, and I thought, that's it. There should be another book. It should continue.
Yeah.
And I actually messaged the author and said, "Is there a sequel coming?" And she was like, "No, it's a standalone." And I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean? You should." So Kelly should write a sequel to Phantom Heart. I totally understand when it's not intended. Originally, this book was supposed to be a standalone book, and now it's not. And, when you're not intending to write a sequel, it can be kind of hard. And I think that's probably why I find writing the sequel to this is a little bit more challenging because it's not something that I originally intended. However, the characters revealed that it was going to be something else, and I thought, oh, great, here we go. So, yeah.
That'll be good. Well, at least you're working towards it, and we won't be hanging for too long. So what is the most surprising thing you've learned on your journey as a writer?
I feel like it's a cliche answer, but just being able to write, I find it surprising that I can do this. I know that not everyone can write a full book, and I'd have no idea how I even write a full book. I guess I also find it surprising that people enjoy the books that I write. I always find it very surprising when someone is like, "I loved your book," and I'm like, "You really this thing that I read, it's not that great." And I know that that's not true, but it's also that self-doubt as an author of
critic. You're your own
yes. I'm like, oh, I read 10 times better books. What do you mean you read my book? There was actually a young woman who was going to do a feature for Until the Last Page a couple of months ago, and she had said to me, "I'm your biggest fan," and I'm like, me? Okay, I didn't know what to do. So I find that surprising. I always find that to be very surprising because I'm not expecting that at all. I am Chantal, who I've lived with myself for 36 years. It's all I can do at times to straighten my hair in the morning and get to work and do the things that I need to do. So it's always so surprising when someone's like, I'm a big fan of you. And I'm like, I'm just stinky old me. What do you mean? But it's so,
Imposter syndrome, I think is what they call it.
yeah. But it's so flattering, and it's so wonderful to know that if I am making a difference for someone, if they are getting something out of my book, then I've done my job as an author. Because I know, like, when I was little reading books, they were my friends. There were so many books that I just read and read again and again and again, and they changed me. They inspired me. So if I'm doing that for someone, or even just making the slightest difference in allowing someone to know that they're not alone, then great. That's all I want.
So what were some of your favorite books as a child?
There's A Boy in the Girl's Bathroom by Lewis Scholar. He also wrote the Wayside Stories books, but I loved that book. I love East by Edith Patu, which is also another like fairy tale retelling. Robin by Robin McKinley. Beauty. Oh my gosh, Beauty by Robin McKinley. I used to love R.L. Stine Fear Street, and I actually have my original vampire book that I got from his series. It was called One Last Kiss, and it came out before Twilight, and I loved that book. So when Twilight came out, I was like, young adult like vampire book. But those are the books that I really remember reading and rereading again, was those fairy tales. I checked out those books in my library. I think the whole library, like, you know, when you would write in your name, just Chantal.
I love that. That was me too. I was totally a book, always nose stuck in a book for sure. That was me. So when you are writing, do you know your love language, and do you try to kind of incorporate it into your writing?
A really great question. I do know my love language. Yes, I do know my love language, and it's quality time. I guess I do. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. I mean, I know that my way of expressing love is gift giving, and I don't think that I'm thinking of Until the Last Page specifically. I'm not entirely sure that there's a lot of gift giving that's going on in that book, but the quality time, I think, is absolutely happening in different ways. And I would say that, yes, that I have definitely used my love language, not only between like romantic couples, but even there is a character named Arch who comes along later in one of the fairy tales, and he has a close friendship with Josephine. And I would even say, like, there is quality time that is spent there that Josephine not only needed, but I think I needed too. And I really, So yes. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that question. I've never thought about that before.
I'm glad. I love that. I try to find unique and different questions. So it's not just, oh, what's the book about? What do you like? Like, I want to make it more depth in my questions. So I always try to find that. So do you read book reviews, or do you avoid them?
No, I read them. I do read them. And at least now, like with this being my 10th book, I've learned how to read them, and I've learned, you know, to take the good with the bad and the bad with the good. If you had asked me that question when I first had a book out, yes, I read all of them, and I took them to heart, and I would cry over them. I remember there was one that gave me like a 1 star and said, I will never read anything by this author, blah. And I was like, oh my God, I'm the worst author ever.
Oh, nice. Jeez.
You know, I have learned you don't really read reviews on Goodreads, you're not supposed to. And I definitely learned my sin with that. But, you know, with all this time, I've definitely learned how to take, you know, the good with the bad. This book isn't going to be for everyone. It's not going to speak to everyone, and that's okay. But yeah, I do. I really do go for the more like 5-star, 4-star reviews, because then it helps me like, oh, okay, this was enjoyable. And when I'm tackling the 1-star and the 2-star, I'm looking for, okay, what can I do better in my next book? If this didn't translate well, what could I be doing next? What could I be doing better? How can I make this character more likable, or that I not info dump so much?
Yeah.
So I've learned at least now how to tackle those criticisms, though I would still beg to differ that I think readers need to remember that people have poured their hearts and souls into these books. And while it's very easy to be like, this sucks, there's certainly different ways of saying that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's that whole, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. I feel. I haven't really read, I think I read one book, and I was just talking actually with another author that I interviewed earlier. It was very dark,
Oh.
and it was like almost too much for me. Like I couldn't finish the book. Like I stopped it, and it was like my first ever like DNF, I think ever. I think I've had maybe one other, and it was a similar situation, but this one was like so dark that I couldn't finish it. And I just didn't put a review. Like I'm not gonna, because it might be someone else's jam that loves like super dark romance, but I couldn't read it. So I was like, I'm just not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna let them be out there and they do their thing. And I'm like, I'm just not gonna say anything. I did write the author, and I said that, I just cannot get past this chapter, and I am so sorry, but I just can't. But I didn't want to, that's her work. Like someone else will really enjoy it. So I didn't want to badmouth it. So that's kind of like, I'm just like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. So
when I'm like reading other book reviews for like other books, I definitely will read everything that I can, because if someone didn't enjoy it, some of the books that you enjoy, I might really enjoy, and some of the books that you don't like, I may not like either. So even those reviews can be really helpful for future readers. But I think it's all about delivery.
How you say it.
Yes.
Yeah.
All about
you
delivery.
Can just say, this wasn't my jam, not like this was the worst book ever.
Yeah.
Like I just.
Yeah. I'm never going to read anything by this author. It's like,
yeah.
But what if you change your mind in 2 years? What if I write a really great book and you want to read it? Like,
yeah, exactly. So,
yeah,
for sure. I agree with you. So, what is something unique and quirky about you that we maybe don't know? Or a hobby?
Well, you might see these little figurines here and the image there. I am a huge fan of BTS. I love BTS. I actually went and saw BTS in Las Vegas on their 4th night performance. And it was their last one that they did in the United States before they were not sent off to the military, but before they joined the military in South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I love Korean dramas. So Until the Last Page was also slightly inspired by a particular Korean drama called W, which is about a girl who gets sucked into a comic book or a manga that her dad has created, and she falls in love with the main lead, and they actually both enter and exit both worlds, hers and his. And I actually remember when I was watching that with my mom, because my mom also loves Korean dramas. It's one of the things that we share together. I had said to her, what if a girl got sucked into a book of fairy tales? Like, what if? So I had already been thinking about that after watching that drama. Something else that might be a little bit more quirky. I'm a pretty boring person, so.
No.
Okay. Over Thanksgiving break, my mom and my boyfriend, they put me in front of the TV. My back was to the TV. They turned on Disney Plus, and I had less than a minute to figure out which Disney movie was being played behind me just by the opening credits. I saw a video like this on TikTok, and I was like, I bet I could do that. And my boyfriend was like, I don't know. And I was like, let's see. And I did. I surprised both my mother and my boyfriend. They were like, you got Cinderella in a second. I was like, yeah, I did. Yeah.
That sounds like a fun game.
I am the friend you call when you need Disney questions answered. I am a huge Disney nerd. I can name Disney songs. I can tell you who's singing it. I can tell you what's happening. I can literally verbatim tell you the entire Beauty and the Beast movie because I've seen it so many times. Yeah. I know by heart. I went to go see the live action film 6 times. I really wanted to, and the problem was that I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And every time I went there, I was like, I'm going to enjoy it this time. I'm going to fall in love with it. It's going to be great. And I didn't. So I'd be like, all right, we're going to go back. Fall in love with it. And I did. So I tried 6 times. And then after that, I bought the DVD and I was like, I'll fall in love with it when I'm at home. And it's not a success.
Yeah.
But that was a quirky thing. I can name the opening of Disney movies under a minute.
That's awesome. That's a good thing. That's a really fun game to play. That sounds like a lot of fun. So my last question for you is, what message do you want readers to take away after reading your book?
Honestly, the thing that I would want my readers to take away is just knowing that they're not alone. When I was writing many of these books, specifically, I guess, until the last page, and it was just trying to keep this mind frame of, I know right now the world can feel really isolating. It can feel really divided. You can feel as though you're the only one who is feeling a particular way. And that's not true. You're not alone. And the world isn't this horrible place to be. It can be a beautiful place. You just have to find beautiful things. And I think sometimes it can be very hard to figure out who you are and all of that. And it's okay to take that time to figure it out. Because when you're reading and you're going on these journeys with characters, they're figuring themselves out. And I think essentially you as a reader are also figuring out what you would do in those situations. And what would you say? And of course we have those hypothetical, like, well, if I was in this situation, I would say this and I would do that. But that's also something you're figuring out about yourself. So I think that self-discovery and being able to ask yourself these questions, do it. Oh my gosh, do it. But also remember, you're not alone. And if you look up from your book, if you find that other people are reading similar books to you, then you're finding a community. You're finding people that you can relate to. And I think that's so important. The last thing, even though I didn't really touch on like death in this book, whereas I have in previous books, because I'm always trying to explore my own grief after losing my dad. It's been about 10 years, so I've had some time to process. But it's still it's still a thing that doesn't ever go away. And I think that we don't talk enough about what that's like. And we're always so afraid to talk about the things that are hard. And having just lost my dog, Taryn, who I've dedicated the book to, no, it's okay. It's been rough, but it's okay. Just one, if any of the readers who can walk away feeling as though that they're not alone in that process, then I feel as though just as a person, I've done something, because grief can feel so isolating, and grief can make you feel as though no one will understand. And while there is some truth to that, not everyone can understand or will understand. There are people who can, and it's okay to be open about it. You don't have to hide it. So don't hide your emotions.
Yeah, and I feel like even that with like depression or anxiety, it's things I suffer from, like, I suffer a lot of the time in silence, but with books, it's like a paradigm shift, or it's like a perspective change sometimes when you're dealing with grief or mental issues, mental health issues, that you can kind of remove yourself from what you're going through, put yourself in another person that's going through something similar, and then watch them like the fly on the wall of how they deal with it.
Yeah. So long story short, I guess that's what I would hope my readers would take away. Just knowing that they're not alone, and it's okay to feel what you're feeling. Just don't hurt anyone.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really am glad you came on today. It was such a delight talking to you, and I wish you all the best in your new adventure with this series, and I hope it comes pouring out of you and that we get to see these characters again very soon. And I hope you have, just a phenomenal time living in that world for a little while.
Thank you. Me too. I hope it goes well. I hope that I can deliver a book that everyone will enjoy. And in the meantime, enjoy until the last page, because it's a fun story. And thank you so much for allowing me to come on today and to answer questions and to talk about my book. I'm always happy to do it. So thank you.
That's what I want to do. I'm a small business person, and you as a book author are a small business, and I like to support small businesses and support other people who are trying to, live their dreams and share their stories or share their craft or their art with other people. So
thank you. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Well, please check her out on Instagram. I linked her information below where you can find her. And then also, if you have a book bestie that has not heard of this story, please share it. Or if you both have read it, you can fangirl with me today, like I did, with finding more about her and getting a look behind the book. And I hope you join me next time as we get another look with a future author. But be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.